Welcome to Magnificat TV News, dedicated to offering the news of the Church. Today is Wednesday, November 3rd, 2021, and these are our headlines. The Pope received U.S. President Joe Biden. According to him, the Pope told them that he could receive communion despite his support for abortion. During the whole month of November, it will be possible to gain the Plenary indulgence, thus extending the period that was previously reserved only for the second. Bolivian bishops are under heavy attack for supporting a rape and a pregnant girl who does not want to have an abortion. The Zan Law, which intended to force education in gender ideology, has not been approved in the Italian Senate, thanks to the fact that the vote was anonymous. The Argentine Diocese of Venado, Tuerto, became famous for publishing a prayer equating the Pachamama with the Virgin. Its bishop resigned when he turned 75 years old. U.S. President Joe Biden was received for an hour and a half by the Pope. According to the President, the Pope repeatedly gave him permission to receive communion.
On Friday, Pope Francis received Joe Biden, President of the United States, accompanied by his wife, Jill. They had a long meeting behind closed doors in the Apostolic Library, during which they reaffirmed their common commitment to fight the pandemic and protect the planet. At first, there were no extensive communiques, but Jeff Mason of Reuters asked President Joe Biden if the abortion issue was discussed during his meeting with Pope Francis, and the U.S. President stated that it was not discussed, but he said that the Pope had told him that he was a good Catholic and that he could continue to receive communion. Such surprising statements, both in substance and form, prompted immediate inquiries to the Vatican, but there has been no clarification either to confirm or deny. The Vatican spokesman limited himself to saying that since it was a private conversation, nothing could be said about its content. What they did talk about was the common commitment to the protection and care of the planet, the fight against the COVID-19 pandemic, as well as the issue of refugees. Reference was also made to the protection of human rights, including the right to freedom of religion and conscience. In November, the U.S. bishops will gather in Baltimore, Maryland, for their fall General Assembly, where they are expected to vote on a document addressing teaching on the reception of the Eucharist.
The Vatican has announced that it is extending to the entire month of November the privilege of gaining plenary indulgence, usually reserved for the second.
Due to the persistence of the pandemic and the measures to contain it, the Apostolic Penitentiary responded to the requests of numerous bishops by issuing a decree announcing the extension of plenary indulgences in a similar way as was done in 2020 due to the COVID-19 pandemic. The Apostolic Penitentiary, therefore, confirms and extends for the entire month of November 2021 all the spiritual benefits already granted on October 22, 2020, through a similar decree with which, also because of COVID-19, plenary indulgences for the faithful departed were extended for the entire month of November 2020. To gain the indulgence, it will be necessary to visit a cemetery and pray there for the deceased, or to go to a church and offer there the usual prayers, Our Father, Creed, and prayer for the Pope, in addition to confession and communion.
The church in Bolivia has been denounced for the authorities, and it is hardly attacked for offering support to a raped girl who does not want to have an abortion.
The Bolivian Episcopal Conference published a statement in which it urges the authorities to respect and protect the right to life and health of a girl who was a victim of rape and of the unborn child. Both lives deserve and must be protected, the statement stresses, and adds that no one can be forced to perform abortions, even in the face of serious sexual violence, because abortion in Bolivia is a crime and no one, not even health personnel, can be forced to commit this crime, and they call for the need to respect conscientious objection. We affirm, say the bishops, that the rights of both the girl and the baby growing in her womb must be protected, since both are innocent and victims of a criminal act which has a very serious responsibility for which they must be held accountable. Since the girl and her mother decided to continue with the pregnancy, safeguarding the health of the girl and the baby, possible solutions must be sought, such as adoption, given that the girl is probably not yet mature enough to assume the care and attention of the baby. For the time being, the Church has already been denounced before the courts by the public defender, and the insults in the networks and the aggressions against ecclesiastical buildings are continuous and very serious.
A victory for freedom in Italy. The Zan Law, which was intended to force children to be educated in gender ideology, has not been approved.
The Italian Senate, in a secret ballot, has given the go-ahead to the cut proposed by the League and Fratelli d'Italia for the Zan bill, that is, the approval of the law that sought to impose gender ideology throughout the country, is paralyzed. 154 senators voted in favor, 131 against, and 2 abstained. The vote, which was secret, was received with applause in the hemicycle. The fact that it was secret, according to analysts, favored the result against the Zan Law. Now the law, which was presented against homotransphobia, at the center of the controversy and dozens of postponements, has a very difficult time to go ahead. The Zan Law has been rejected by the whole of Catholic Italy, and was even the subject of a warning to the Italian Senate by the Vatican, as it could violate the concordat between the two states. Opposition to the law also arose among feminist and lesbian associations, which opposed the addition of transgender persons to the categories protected by the law, punishing hate crimes based on sex, race, and religion.
The Pope has accepted the retirement just after his 75th birthday of the Bishop of Venado, Tuerto, responsible for the blasphemous prayer against the Virgin Mary.
The Diocese of Venado, Tuerto has a new bishop. The Pope has accepted the resignation of his prelate only 4 days after reaching the age of retirement, when it is normal to have several months or even years of extension. The Diocese of Venado, Tuerto will be governed by the Korean Han Lim-moon, who until now was coadjutor bishop of the diocese. Moon is an old acquaintance of Pope Francis. In 2014, the Holy Father appointed him auxiliary bishop of San Martin. At the end of 2020, he appointed him as coadjutor of Venado, Tuerto. The Diocese of Venado, Tuerto was in the news last August when, on the occasion of the Day of the Pachamama, it published a prayer to this pagan deity that provoked the indignation of many Catholics in social networks by equating it to the Blessed Virgin Mary. Published by Caritas Venado Tuerto, this was deleted after the controversy, and they were forced to issue a lukewarm apology. This apology made things worse, as it justified what they had done because they wanted to be in communion with the Pope. In this way, they made the pontiff indirectly responsible for what had happened. The quick acceptance of the resignation of the bishop, who was ultimately responsible for the blasphemous prayer, indicates that the Vatican was not very happy with either the prayer or the subsequent apologies.
Our editorial this week is dedicated to commenting on, among other things, the attack on the church in Bolivia for rejecting abortion.
This week, as always, there is no lack of reasons for concern and displeasure in the church and in the world. But I want to focus on some good things that have happened, and I think it is worth highlighting. The first one in Italy. A few months ago, a part of the Italian parliament, the lower house, approved a law known by the name of its author, the Zan Law, a law that practically forced to accept the gender ideology, and of course required to teach it in schools, even in Catholic schools. The Vatican took full action against this law and warned that it violated the agreement between the Church and the Italian state. The vote was taken this week in the Senate. It was done anonymously, that is, secretly, and the law was defeated. That is, although it had apparently all the possibilities to go ahead, it was rejected. I think it is great news. Also because it means that the Vatican is seriously involved so that the gender ideology was not imposed in a compulsory way in Italy. Another good news comes from Argentina. A few months ago, in the Diocese of Venado, Tuerto, which is already an original name for a diocese, well, in that diocese, the Caritas organization, supposedly with the approval of the bishop, published a prayer to the Pachamama, where she was compared with the Blessed Virgin Mary. That created a huge commotion, lots of protests, and the authors of this blasphemy had no other idea than to say that they had done it to be in tune with Pope Francis. That is to say, they had done it, according to them, because they thought that Pope Francis liked blasphemy against the Virgin. Unbelievable. I protested. I earned a lot of insults for protesting, but I protested, and so did many others. Well, this week, the Bishop of Venado, Tuerto, presented his resignation for reasons of age, and the Pope accepted it 5 days after he presented it. I would have sincerely liked that they had accepted his resignation or forced him to resign the day after that blasphemy was published. But well, it is good news that immediately after submitting the resignation, they have accepted it. And I think it is good news that serves as a warning to the flatterers, those who are willing to do anything because they do not believe in anything in order to please their Lord, and it turns out that their Lord is not happy, and that in the end they do more harm to the Lord with what they want to do in His honor than having remained silent. It should also serve as a warning for something else. It is very easy to insult the Blessed Virgin Mary. Not only sects do it, it is more and more frequent among Catholics, and they have to know that the Virgin Mary is not alone, that this mother has children that we love her very much, sinful children, unfortunately, but children that we love her very much, children that are ready to give their lives for her if necessary, and that insulting the Virgin Mary is not going to be free. So it is better that the Virgin Mary be left aside with their paranoia and their blasphemies, because insulting her will always have consequences. I repeat, this mother has children, and those who so easily insult her should know it. A third piece of good news, although it will create problems, is good news because of what the Church has done, not because of the news that originated the event. An 11-year-old girl is pregnant in Bolivia. the result of a rape by someone in her family. The good news is that the Church has given all her support to the girl, and that the girl, with the support also of her parents, has decided to carry on with the pregnancy and not to undergo an abortion. And that is where the fierce demon has been unleashed. Because the government, which we already know what line is that government of Bolivia, has said that the girl has to have an abortion. And the Church has confronted the government. That is the good news. The Church has confronted the government and has said that no one should be forced to have an abortion. The attacks against the Church in Bolivia are being fierce, terrible. The insults, the threats, even the defender of the people, let's call her that because that's her official title, has filed a lawsuit against the Church. For what reason? Because the Church wants to support the raped girl to do what the girl wants to do. It is the government that wants to force the girl, against the will of the girl, and her parents wants to force her to have an abortion. Now, it turns out that the guilty party is not the rapist. Nobody is talking about the rapist. The guilty party is the Catholic Church that wants to help the girl. The girl does not want to have an abortion. The Church wants to help her. It is even willing to take care of the child when it is born. It turns out that the Church is the guilty party. It is that the abortionists reach an extreme of madness and paranoia in their hatred against life and against the Church, that they fall into absolutely ridiculous extremes. The Church does nothing but say, respect the will of the girl. She does not want to have an abortion. And the government says instead we must force her to have an abortion. And because the Church wants to support her in her decision, the Church is the bad one, not the rapist. The Church is the bad one, and the attacks go against the Church. Thank God that the Church in Bolivia is firm, but we have to pray for them because it is not being easy due to the political regime they have, and also due to the hatred of those who hate the Church because they hate life. And since we are asking for prayers, I would also like to ask for prayers for Cuba. This week, a group of Cuban Catholics have come as close as they have been allowed. They have reached the Vatican to draw attention to the situation on the island, and they have succeeded. They have succeeded because it has been a source of news. They are Catholics. They want freedom for their homeland, and they ask for prayers. They ask for support. They show the world with their gesture that there is a dictatorship and a bloody dictatorship. We must accompany them with our prayers, to them and to those of other countries, Venezuela, Nicaragua, and these countries, besides having lay Catholics who are fighting for freedom. They are lucky to have bishops who do not remain silent and who defend the human rights in their country. The Episcopate of Nicaragua, the Episcopate of Venezuela is exemplary. Let us pray for these countries that are victims of communist tyranny. See you next week, God willing.
If you wish to be up to date about what is happening in the Church, you can follow us in our news page, www.magnificat.tv. See you next week, God willing.